It was a cloudy morning. The air was cold and still, like something big was about to happen. A large crowd stood near the gates of Greenwood Memorial Park. Expensive cars were parked everywhere. Men in black suits, women in designer coats. They had all come for the same reason. Mr. Edward Thompson, one of the richest and most respected men in town, had died. People were whispering as they stood around the grand coffin. There were flowers everywhere, white roses, lilies, and orchids. Everyone wore black. Everyone, except for one boy. He walked in slowly. His skin was dark, his shoes were old, and his jacket looked too big for him. He didn't speak to anyone. He didn't smile or cry. He simply walked down the aisle and sat in the front row. Whispers began. Who is he? Why is he sitting there? Is he lost? One man, Mr. Thompson's nephew, leaned over to his wife and said with a smirk, "Maybe he thinks this is a food bank." They both laughed quietly. But the boy didn't move. He sat tall and still, his eyes fixed on the coffin. His name was Jordan, and nobody knew why he was there. The pastor stepped forward and began the service. People stood, sang hymns, and wiped tears. But Jordan didn't move once. He didn't sing. He didn't cry. He just stared. After the prayers, the family was invited to share memories. Mr. Thompson's daughter, Mrs. Lila, stood up. "My father was a great man," she said, voice full of pride. "He built a company from nothing. He gave us a life full of comfort. We were lucky to have him." Everyone clapped softly. Then his brother came forward, speaking with a loud voice. "Edward believed in family. He always put us first. He left this world a giant." More clapping. But still. Jordan sat quiet. An older woman sitting behind him leaned forward and whispered, "Young man, are you part of the family?" Jordan turned his head slightly and said just one word. "No." She frowned and sat back. "Then why are you sitting up front?" He didn't answer. As the service ended, people began to walk outside. Some stopped to look at Jordan. A few even laughed, shaking their heads. One young man pushed it further. "You know this isn't your place, right?" Jordan finally looked at him. His voice was calm. "I know." The man blinked. He expected anger or fear. But Jordan wasn't scared. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He just stood up and walked away. Outside the chapel, the crowd had gathered for coffee and snacks. Laughter replaced sadness. Some people already talked about inheritance. "I bet the house goes to Lila. The company must be for the nephew. I hope I get something. I looked after Edward that whole summer." But nobody noticed that the lawyer, Mr. Jacobs, was quietly watching Jordan from a distance. He walked over and gently tapped Jordan on the shoulder. "Jordan, I'm glad you came." Some heads turned. "You know him?" one guest asked. The lawyer smiled. "Yes, Mr. Thompson asked me to make sure he was here today." Now the whispers turned into full shock. "What? Why would Edward care?" "About him?" Jordan didn't speak. He just nodded at the lawyer and turned to leave. Later that day, Mr. Jacobs opened a file at his office. He looked at the last will and testament of Edward Thompson. Jordan's name was at the top. The day after the funeral, a group of family members gathered inside a beautiful glass building. This was the law office of Mr. Jacobs, the man trusted with Edward Thompson's last wishes. The room was silent at first. Long leather chairs, shiny floors, and a large table in the center. Everyone looked nervous, but also excited. They were, dressed in their best clothes, waiting for one thing, the will. Edward's daughter, Lila, sat at the head of the table, acting like she already owned everything. "Let's just get this over with," she said. "We all know how this will go." Her cousin laughed. "Yeah, we know who Dad's favorites were." The door opened. Everyone turned their heads. Jordan walked in quietly. Same old jacket, same calm face. Lila frowned. Why is he here again? Mr. Jacobs looked serious. Because he was invited by Edward himself. Now the room buzzed with whispers. He invited that boy? What is going on? Is this a joke? Jordan said nothing. He sat in the last chair, far from the family, but close to the lawyer. Mr. I. Jacobs opened a thick folder. Before I begin reading Mr. Thompson's will, I need to remind you all, this was his final decision. No one can change it. Everyone nodded. Some smiled, ready to hear their names. The lawyer began. To my daughter Lila, I leave the summer house in Miami and a small investment account. Lila smiled proudly. I told you, the lawyer continued. To my brother Charles, I leave the boat and all my shares in the fishing company. Charles nodded. To my nephew Mark, I leave the antique car collection. Mark clapped his hands. That's what I was waiting for. Everyone looked happy. But then, Mr. Jacobs paused. His voice grew quiet. And now, to Jordan Carter. The room went still. No one breathed. I leave the family estate, the main house, and full ownership of Thompson Foundation, the company I built with my own hands. Gasps filled the room. What? This is not possible. Who even is this kid? Lila stood up, face red with anger. He's no one. He doesn't belong to this family. But Mr. Jacobs held up a hand. Mr. Thompson wrote this. With full understanding, he said Jordan is the only one who truly understood his heart. Jordan didn't smile. He didn't cry. He simply looked down, silent. Lila slammed her hand on the table. No, this is fake. It's wrong. This boy is just some outsider. Mr. Jacobs shook his head. He's not just anyone, and if you want to hear the full story, you'll have to wait until tomorrow. Everyone stared at Jordan like he had stolen something. But he didn't respond. He stood up and walked out of the room as calm as he had walked in. Outside, the sun was setting. Jordan stood alone on the sidewalk, the wind touching his face. Inside that room, people saw him as a stranger. But Edward had seen something else, a quiet strength, a heart full of honesty, a mind ready to lead, and the truth was still to come. The news spread fast. By evening, almost everyone in town had heard about the strange boy who inherited Edward Thompson's house and company. Some called it a mistake. Others called it a scandal. But no one knew the real story. That night, Jordan sat alone in his small room. The light above him was dim. His old backpack lay in the corner. A few clothes, one pair of shoes, and a small photo, a picture of a man shaking a boy's hand. The man in the photo was Edward Thompson. Jordan looked at the photo and remembered the first time they met. It had been almost 2 years ago. Jordan was 15. He was standing outside a local grocery store, wearing a shirt 2 sizes too small. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten all day. Edward walked by with a bag of fresh fruit. Most rich men would ignore a hungry boy. But Edward stopped. You hungry, son? Jordan nodded slowly. Edward gave him an apple. Then he did something unexpected. He sat down, beside Jordan, right there on the sidewalk. What's your name? Jordan. Do you go to school? I try, but I work too. Edward didn't judge him. He didn't talk down to him. Instead, he asked questions, real ones. For the next hour, they sat and talked. Edward listened like no one ever had. Before he left, Edward gave Jordan a small card. If you ever need help, come to this address. Ask for me. Jordan never forgot that day. He showed up the next week. Edward didn't just help him. He gave him a part-time job. He paid for school books. He taught him things no one else did. How to run a business, how to talk with confidence, how to listen with care. It was the start of something deep. Not just help, not just kindness, a bond. Back in the present, Jordan wiped a tear from the photo. He didn't want the money. He didn't want the company. He just missed Edward. The next morning, the lawyer called Jordan. "I think it's time you tell them the truth." Jordan didn't want to go, but he knew he had to. That afternoon, the family gathered again in the law office. Lila looked angry. Mark looked confused. Everyone else just looked curious. Jordan entered quietly, like before. But this time he carried something in his hand. It was a letter. He placed it on the table. "This is from Edward," Jordan said. "He wrote it for this day." Mr. Jacobs opened the letter and began to read. "To my family, if you are reading. This, it means I am gone. And you are shocked. I know. Jordan is not just a random boy. I met him when he had nothing. And I saw something rare in him. Patience, respect, and a deep desire to learn. He never asked for money. He never asked for help. But he earned everything I gave him. He worked with me, watched me, learned from me. I trust him more than anyone, and I believe he will carry my work forward, not because of blood, but because of heart." The room went silent. No one spoke. Jordan stood up to leave. But just before he reached the door, Lila's voice stopped him. "Wait." He turned. She looked. At him differently now. Not with anger, not with pride, with questions. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" Jordan shrugged. "I didn't think it mattered. Until now." And then he walked away. Outside, the wind was strong. But Jordan walked straight, without fear. He had no fancy suit, no family name, no gold watch. But he had something stronger, Edward's trust, and soon the world would see why. A week had passed since Jordan became the official owner of the Thompson Foundation. But things were not easy. People in the company whispered when he walked by. Some looked at him with cold eyes, others laughed behind his back. "That boy? He doesn't belong here. He's not a real Thompson. What does he know about running a business?" Jordan heard it all, but he stayed calm. He remembered Edward's voice in his head. "Let them doubt you, Jordan. Let your work answer them." One morning, Mr. Jacobs came to his office with serious news. "Jordan, the company is in trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "The biggest investor is pulling out. That means we might lose our biggest project." Jordan sat still for a moment. His hands felt cold. "How much time do we have?" 3 days. After that, they're gone." Jordan walked to the conference room where the top employees sat. They were older, more experienced. Most didn't respect him. One man, Mr. Blake, looked him up and down. "We need real leadership right now, not a kid playing boss." Jordan didn't react. He simply said, "We have 3 days. I'm not going to waste them arguing. Let's focus." Some rolled their eyes. But one woman, Ms. Carter, nodded. She had worked with Edward too. And she saw something in Jordan that reminded her of him. That night, Jordan stayed in the office. He read every file, every report Edward had written. He barely slept. He made phone calls, wrote emails, reached out to people Edward once trusted. By morning, he had a plan. On the second day, Jordan called an emergency meeting with the investors. They didn't want to come. But curiosity pulled them in. In the meeting room, Jordan stood in front of a large screen. He didn't wear a suit. He didn't carry a briefcase. Just simple clothes and clear eyes. "I know many of you don't trust me," Jordan said calmly. "You think I'm too young, too new, too quiet. But Mr. Thompson didn't choose me because I was loud. He chose me because I listen." The room stayed silent. Jordan clicked on the screen. A plan appeared, clear, smart, and strong. He spoke with confidence, showing numbers, timelines, and solutions no one expected. This company isn't just about money. Edward wanted it to help people. This new plan keeps the project alive and supports local workers, too. The main investor sat forward, impressed. "Who helped you make this?" Jordan smiled. "Edward did. I just followed what he taught me." By the end of the meeting, everyone clapped. The investor stood up and shook Jordan's hand. "You've earned my trust." Back at the office, Mr. Blake walked up to Jordan. "I misjudged you." Jordan nodded. "That's okay. You weren't the only one." Later that evening, Jordan sat in Edward's old chair looking out the window. He wasn't thinking about money or power. He was thinking about doing the right thing. And now, people were starting to see he belonged. After Jordan saved the project, things started to change at the Thompson Foundation. People greeted him with respect. Meetings felt different, calmer, more focused. Even Mr. Blake began asking Jordan for advice. But while the company slowly accepted him, the family had not. One evening, Jordan received a letter. No name, no return address, just a short line written on old paper. "You think you know Edward? Look in the red box in his study." His heart beat faster. What red box? He had only visited Edward's home once since the funeral. It still felt strange walking through the house without him, but now something pulled him back. The next morning, Jordan went to the house. He walked up the stairs to Edward's private study, a quiet room filled with books and memories. He searched every drawer, every shelf. Then, behind a row of thick books, he saw it. A small red box, dusty and locked. He opened it with Edward's old desk key. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all written by Edward. Some addressed to people Jordan didn't know, some to Jordan himself. One envelope read, "For Jordan. Open when you feel lost." Jordan didn't open it yet. Instead, he began reading the others, one by one. In those letters, Edward wrote about his youth, about his mistakes, about his regrets, and about a secret he never told his family. Edward had grown up poor. He had struggled in his early life, just like Jordan. He had been laughed at, ignored, underestimated. But someone had helped him back then. "He believed in me when no one else did," Edward wrote. "That's why I believe in you, Jordan. You remind me of who I once was." Jordan's hands shook. Now the trust made sense. This wasn't just about kindness, it was legacy. As Jordan closed the box, the house phone rang. It was Mr. Jacobs. "Jordan, you need to come back to the office. Now." "What happened?" "There's someone here asking questions about you. A woman. She says she knows Edward, and she has proof that changes everything." At the office, Jordan walked into the boardroom. A woman in her 50s sat calmly, holding a folder. Her name was Miriam. She looked at Jordan with eyes that held stories. "You don't know me," she said softly. "But I knew Edward long before. The world did." She opened the folder. Inside were photos, old ones. Edward, as a young man, standing beside her. "We were best friends," she said. "And for a short time, we were more." Jordan listened closely. "I left the country for years. I didn't know Edward passed until last week. But I came back because I know he left something more behind." She handed Jordan a final letter. "He wanted you to have this, too." Jordan opened it. It was Edward's handwriting again. "If Miriam comes to you, listen to her. She knows. Things I never had the courage to share. Learn from her. Trust her." Jordan looked up. Miriam smiled kindly. "You remind me of him," she said. "The quiet fire, the steady heart." Later that evening, Jordan sat alone in his office. He had power now, respect. And slowly, pieces of Edward's past were falling into place. But he knew this wasn't over. There were still secrets left to uncover, and someone, maybe more than one person, didn't want them found. Jordan stood at the large window in Edward's office, watching the city lights blink in the distance. He held Edward's letter tightly. Every word felt like a puzzle piece. Miriam's return, the red box, the secrets. It all pointed to something bigger. But what? He didn't know yet, and he didn't have much time to figure it out. The next morning, something strange happened. Mr. Jacobs came into Jordan's office with a worried face. "Jordan, someone just leaked private company files to the media." "What kind of files?" "Old. Contracts, sensitive deals, nothing illegal, but enough to start rumors." Jordan stayed calm, but inside he felt a storm rising. "Do we know who did it?" "Not yet, but I think it came from inside." Jordan nodded slowly. "Then we find out who." Later that day, Jordan sat with Miriam again. He told her about the leak. She listened carefully, then leaned forward. "Jordan, you need to be careful. Edward had enemies, people in this building. Some smiled at him during meetings but tried to push him out in secret. Do you think one of them is doing this now?" "Maybe. Or maybe they're afraid of what you might find next." Jordan thought of the red box, the letters, Edward's secrets. "There's more, isn't there?" Miriam looked down, her voice soft. "Yes. Edward once told me. There was a deal made years ago. A dirty deal. He regretted it for the rest of his life. And he hid the proof." "Where?" "He never said. But if someone knows you're looking for it, they might do anything to stop you." The next evening, Jordan stayed late in the office. Everyone else had gone home. The building was quiet. Too quiet. As he walked toward the old storage room where Edward kept private files, he heard a sound behind him. Footsteps. He turned. No one was there. He kept walking. When he opened the storage room door, it was dark. Dust floated in the air. He stepped inside and turned on the light. Boxes, files, records. He pulled one down and began searching. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him. Jordan froze, locked. He tried the handle. Nothing. Then he heard the click of a camera. Someone was watching him from the security system. A voice came from a hidden speaker. "You should have walked away, Jordan. This company doesn't belong to you." It was a man's voice. Cold, angry. Jordan didn't recognize it. "Who are you?" he asked, trying to stay calm. No answer. Then silence. After 10 minutes, the door finally clicked open. Mr. Blake stood there. "What are you doing in here?" Jordan didn't answer. He stared at Blake, searching his face. "Who else knew about this room?" Jordan asked. Blake shrugged. "Only a few of us. Edward trusted me." Jordan nodded slowly. "Did he trust you? Or did he fear you?" Blake's eyes narrowed, but he didn't respond. He just walked away. That night, Jordan met with Miriam again. They sat in the garden, behind the building. He told her everything. The voice, the threat, the locked room. "Someone's trying to scare you," she said. "That means you're close." Jordan looked at the night sky. His voice was quiet but firm. "I'm not scared. I just need to find the last truth." Back in his apartment, Jordan finally opened the letter addressed to him in the red box. For Jordan, open when you feel lost. He read Edward's words slowly. "If you feel the world is against you, remember this. I chose you not because you were perfect, but because you were honest. The real power is not in being loud. It's in staying true to yourself. Find the truth, and don't let fear stop you." Jordan folded the letter. He knew what he had to do next. The morning sun was just rising as Jordan stood outside the company gates. Today felt different. Something in his heart told him this was the day everything would be revealed. He walked in, holding Edward's final letter in one hand, and his courage in the other. Inside, the building buzzed with quiet tension. Everyone knew about the leaks. Whispers filled the hallways. Some people looked at Jordan with fear, others with doubt. But Jordan kept walking. He had one goal now: find the truth, speak it, no matter what. He entered Edward's office and sat down. On the desk was a folder marked Private. He opened it. Inside were pictures, old ones, a younger Edward, a group of men, a signed document, and a check, dated 20 years ago. Jordan's eyes widened. The document was a deal between Edward's company and another firm. That deal had pushed out a black-owned company unfairly. Edward had tried to stop it, but he was tricked by someone on the board, and that person was still here. Jordan flipped the last page. It had a name: Mr. Blake. Jordan stood up and walked straight to the boardroom. The board members were already there, including Blake. Jordan placed the folder on the table. "This company has a history," he said, "and today I'm going to tell it." Everyone went silent. Jordan opened the folder and showed the proof. "Edward tried to fix this mistake. He left me the truth, and he wanted the company to know. He wanted it to heal." Blake stood up, angry. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're just a kid Edward felt sorry for." Jordan didn't flinch. No, he didn't feel sorry for me. He believed in me, just like he believed this company could change. The room was still. Mr. Jacobs looked at the documents. So did the others. Finally, Ms. Porter, one of the senior board members, spoke. "This is true," she said. "I was here when it happened. Edward told me about it before he died." Blake's face turned pale. "You don't understand. Edward forgave me." Jordan looked him in the eye. "But you never told the truth." News of the meeting spread fast. By afternoon, Blake had resigned. The company released a public statement admitting its past and promising to support fairness and change. Jordan became more than just Edward's heir. He became a symbol of truth and courage. A week later, Jordan visited Edward's grave. He stood quietly, holding flowers. "I found it," he whispered. "The truth. I followed your words. And I stayed strong." He placed the letter on the grave. The wind picked up, gently carrying the edges of the paper. As Jordan walked back, Miriam was waiting in the car. She smiled softly. "Edward would be proud of you." "I hope so," Jordan said. "I didn't just want the company. I wanted to honor him." And you did. At the next company event, something special happened. Jordan stood on stage, ready to give a short speech. But before he spoke, the audience began to clap. It started small, then grew louder and louder. They weren't just clapping for the new CEO. They were clapping for the young black man who had been laughed at, doubted, and mocked, but who had stood quietly, learned wisely, and spoken truthfully. Because sometimes the quietest person in the room carries the loudest truth. And when that truth is finally spoken, it can change everything.